Hey, Brittany.
Hi, Rachel.
So we are in the thick of the season that I hate the most of the year, and that is tax season. It is April when we're recording this, early April.
April.
Yeah, as some of you might know, taxes are typically due, or the filing, on April 15th. That's typically, unless they grant an extension for some reason. But April 15th is when your tax return is supposed to be postmarked and mailed to the IRS. And so, first of all, what is a tax return? Like that document that your parents are filling out and stressing over, maybe if they're like me. It is not actually your taxes, it is the tax return. So what that means is all year, if you have like a normal full-time job where there's withholding, then your employer, your boss, takes a little bit of money out of your paycheck, maybe not so little, and sends it to the government every so often whenever they're paid.
Usually every paycheck, I think, but I guess it can vary. Yeah.
Yeah, every paycheck, they take some out, it's withheld and sent to the government for your taxes, right? And so then at the end of the year, then you got to do some accounting and figure out how much did you make, how much do you owe, and how much did you pay. And typically when there's a difference between how much you owe and how much you paid, you either get a refund if you paid too much, or you owe some taxes if you paid too little. And so April 15th is when the deadline is to figure that out. And I
have not gotten a refund in a very, very long time. I wish I did.
Yeah, the last time I got a refund, it was small, and I actually owed more on my state form than my refund was.
Win.
So it didn't really work out very well. But here's the thing. If you think about it, a tax refund is kind of a bad thing because it means that you paid the government more than you owed, and they just have to pay you a little bit back. So it all depends
people act
on
like it's, I remember when I used to get them acting like, oh, I got extra money. And it's not, it's like that, they call it girl math, you know, when they're like, oh, you like return, what is it? It's like you spent the money already and then you go and return, let's say you bought a dress and you go and return the dress and you get the money back and you think, oh, I just got $60 new. But it's like, no, you didn't, because you already spent that money. But that's how everybody feels when they get their tax refund. It's like, oh, look at this money the government gave me. It's like, no, they're giving it back to you after they took it.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you have as much withheld as what you owe. So you don't overpay, you don't underpay, you pay them exactly what you owe, and then April 15th should be a wash. In other words, zero. But never quite works out that way. And it's very frustrating, and it's very nerve-wracking for me personally, because it's like, how big of a check do I have to write?
Yeah. You know what gets me too? So
what?
You'll learn this someday, kids, but so the government allegedly knows how much you owe them. They have all these auditors. They have all these people, right? But they don't, it's this fun, and I say fun in quotes, it's this fun little guessing game we play with the government, because they say, well, we know how much you owe us, but we're not going to tell you. So you have to go and pay hundreds, sometimes thousands if you have your own business, to go pay somebody privately to do all the numbers and tell you how much you owe us, and then you pay us that, and then we're still going to check the numbers again, and we're going to find any way to find a way you may have messed up and take more money. But it doesn't make any sense, because if they already know how much they owe us or we owe them, and they're going to do it anyway, like we have to pay. It's so... It's a terrible system.
It's very nerve-wracking. I hope it's reformed. I hope there's some reform coming. You know, Trump has talked about various things like getting rid of the income tax altogether and just funding the government with tariffs and having the external revenue service instead of the internal revenue service. And that it sounds kind of pie in the sky to me. So we'll see. That would be nice if you kids, by the time you get old enough to pay taxes, it's totally different. But let's just assume all things being equal, what you're going to experience is similar to what we are experiencing today. And yeah, so it gets complicated with taxes when there's things like deductions, right? A deduction is an amount of money that you can take off of your total income to reduce your tax burden, like the bill that you have to pay. So you can deduct things from your taxes, and it, you kids are a tax deduction. you're worth like a couple $1,000s off your parents' taxes every year.
So next time somebody tells you you're priceless, they actually the government has given me.
You do have a price. Kidding. But anyway, that's how it gets complicated, and if you take a lot of deductions that might amount to a red flag for an audit. And an audit is when the IRS comes in and they personally look over all of your documentation and see if they can find any mistakes or omissions or deductions that you have made up from air, things like that. And they try to see if you've been cheating or lying or making mistakes. And that's bad, because if they find big mistakes, then they assess penalties and
It's
fees
worse.
and
It's-
it gets really bad. So
Yep.
we generally think taxes are theft. And we disagree with most forms of taxation because even though it's supposedly voluntary, it's not really. So it begs the question, if you disagree with taxes, should you still pay them? And the answer is, unfortunately, yes.
Unless you
Yes.
really like jail.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Now, not saying there weren't people who've gotten away with it, don't use them as the example. But I mean, when you do get caught for it, the penalties are hefty. And so there was a famous mobster. There was a famous mobster, Al Capone.
Ooh, Al
back in the
Capone.
day. Terrible,
Taxes.
did lots of violent things, but historically a big mobster. So they could not get him on any of the crimes he actually did. They kept trying to arrest him, for the things he did, and they couldn't
Get
get
off
him.
and get off
Do you
and
know
get
how
off.
they got him? His taxes. They found him cheating on his taxes, because if they look hard enough at anyone, they can find something wrong. But they were able to find that, and that is how he got sent to prison, not because of
Yeah.
the murders and killings and stealing and all those things. It was because
Tax
of his
evasion.
taxes. Yeah, tax evasion.
Yeah. So, and one thing that you will see out there in internet land, if you look, is there's a lot of people who try to feed you a line that taxes are unfair, they're unconstitutional, and you don't actually owe them because of this loophole or that legality or something. And maybe they're right. Maybe they are right. But the IRS doesn't think they're right, and they are the ones with the guns in the cages.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of us are very, maybe the amendment wasn't ratified though it was supposed to be. There's a lot of things about the passing of the income tax that are sus, as the kids say. They're suspect.
Yeah.
But like you said, they have the guns in the cages.
And there was one famous guy, Erwin Schiff, Peter Schiff's dad, who was big into these theories and explaining to people, like he sold books and everything, about why you don't actually owe the taxes and you shouldn't pay them. And guess what happened to him? He died in tax prison.
Yeah.
Really sad, because you'd love for someone like that to be right. And again, maybe they are right, but it doesn't matter. If the IRS comes after you, try telling it to them, and undermining their whole foundation. So it's sad, but my strong advice to you is as you're becoming an adult, if you're already an adult, to as painful and horrible as it is to pay your taxes, pay exactly what you owe, not 1 penny less, not 1 penny more. Make sure that everything is documented. Have your ducks in a row. If you need an accountant, get a good accountant that can keep you out of the crosshairs of the IRS. That's how I live. Because even worse then the stress that I go through this time of year would be having to go through stress all the time, wondering when are they going to come get me? When am I going to get the notice of an audit? And all these taxes are going to be due with fines and fees and everything tacked onto it. It could be much, much worse than having to write a check every April. But anyway, any other thoughts?
On a happy note, we will wrap it up there. This is your painful dose of what's waiting for you in adulthood. We will leave it there. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast and be real nice to your parents during tax season because they might be stressed too. And until next time,
give your mom a back massage.
We'll talk to you later.
See you next time.